Well, it is 3 o'clock, so I will call this meeting of August 25th, 2020 of the ECUA to order. Mr. Perkins, I've asked to lead us in the prayer and the pledge. Mr. Perkins.
Sure. Let us pray. Almighty God, thank you so much for the opportunity during these difficult times to come make decisions for this community, for meeting our most basic needs, things that are very important to the people we represent. Give us wisdom to make these decisions, Lord. And please be with our fellow board member who we've just learned suffered symptoms of a stroke and is in the hospital, Dr. Larry Walker, and his family. Give them peace and comfort, Lord, and full healing. We ask these in your son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. We come now to the adoption of the agenda. I would like to add under item 7, the handout which you received earlier, labeled GR-2008, if you will include that in the motion. Does anyone have any other additions to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Is there a second? Dr. Alexander seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? If not, the agenda is adopted 4-0. We have item 4 is a public hearing on the proposed establishment of a revised sanitation service charges. Is there anyone here asking to be recognized in the public hearing?
I see no one in the audience.
Okay, then there is no one here. Then we have item 1, the adoption of the special resolution number SR 20-17, a final rate setting special resolution establishing certain revised sanitation service charges, and that is on page 5. Mr. Woody, would you walk through this item, please?
I certainly will. I need to turn my speaker off.
We can hear you. Now we can't hear you.
You're also hearing feedback from a microphone. I got to turn this off in a second. Here we go. Great little feedback there. The purpose of the special resolution is to establish our new revised sanitation sewer rates for FY21, which should begin October 1st, if approved by a majority of the board. As recommended in the budget as presented, the recommendation is for a 2% increase across the board. So in the pages that follow, pages 7 through 11 is, 12, is a listing of all our sanitation rates. We've identified and presented for you and for the general public's information our current rate schedule, as well as our proposed rate schedule. What has changed as you look on the proposed rate schedule, those items associated with collection, and then certainly the column totals also then reflect the 2% increase. The numbers that have not changed, such as those labeled disposal, those are rates that we pay for the county. Those are set by the county, and therefore those rates have not changed. So the only thing that has a 2% increase applied to them are collection rates, and that follows across all the document from the front to the back. The rate schedule does take into account all our services that we're currently providing, keeping in mind that as of the 1st of January, we will be discontinuing services in Santa Rosa County and only be providing those services in Escambia County. Are there any questions?
Move the resolution.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions? Mr. Woody, what in terms of dollar amount will the average customer see in their change of rates?
Approximately 45 cents a month per customer for a residential rate. Obviously varies if you have larger containers or if you're doing commercial work.
It's on page 7.
And that's non-city residents. It doesn't impact city
Right.
center.
Yes,
Right.
that's true. Don't provide service inside city of Pensacola.
And how does this rate compare to the city? Do you know?
That's not a number that I've committed to memory yet. I'm sorry, I don't.
As I recall, we have consistently been lower, and I would assume we still are.
My staff is lower, but I can't quantify the difference for you.
Anyone else on the board have questions, comments? If not, we are now voting on item 4A1, the special resolution number SR 20-17. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? If not, it passes 4-0. The next item is open forum. Is there anyone who wishes to address us in open forum? Ms. Miller, do you have any cards?
I see no one in the audience.
Okay. Okay, then the open forum is closed. Item 6 is presentations. We have our monthly Recycle Star. And I would ask Ms. Campbell, if you will, pick a number between 1 and 18 to determine this month's winner.
Number 6.
Number 6. Ms. Miller, who is our lucky winner?
Number 6 is Kenneth Moon. Kenneth Moon.
Well, congratulations, and you will receive all the bells and whistles and balloons and awards. I guess no balloons. That's not good for the environment, is it? And congratulations for being a good recycling customer. The next item is a presentation on the sewer expansion program, and I believe Stacy Hayden is going to do this presentation. So Stacy, you are recognized. And board members, we have kind of a light agenda today, and we have not had a real update on sewer expansion for quite a while, and this is pretty important. So I'm going to let him be as thorough as possible, and please ask any questions, since this is a very important item. And Mr. Hayden, you are recognized.
Gotcha. Thank you, Ms. Benson. Certainly appreciate it. I'll dive right in. I try not to be too long, but as you said, there's quite a bit of information that I need to cover, and I want to try to be as thorough to give all the board members as much information as possible and be up to date. As most of you are aware, the ECUA adopted the sewer expansion program back in the mid-1990s, and I'm sure if Dr. Walker were here, he would be calling out the 1995 date, I think, that he normally does, and I wish I had as much history as he does, but we have logged over 90 projects beginning with sewer lines installed on Creighton Road when it was widened back in 1996. When we started, ECUA staff met with representatives from DEP and the Escambia County Health Department to establish some priority areas for future sewer expansion. The goals of the sewer expansion program are pretty straightforward. The priority areas were based on some of the goals: eliminate the impact of septic tanks on surface and groundwater. For example, proximity to surface water within 1/2 mile of a proposed sewer expansion area. We wanted to protect sources of potable water in those areas close to ECUA water wells. We wanted to eliminate health hazards relating to malfunctioning septic tanks, and to do that, we periodically meet with the Florida Department of Health to identify those areas where they have an increased history, an increase in septic tank failures. And lastly, one of the goals is to expand ECUA's sewer customer base.
Stacy, may I interrupt you for a moment? I'm hearing a lot of feedback. Are the other board members hearing a lot of feedback on this? You're not? You are. I wonder if the people in the boardroom, other than Stacy, turned off their microphones, if that would stop the feedback. Can we try that?
I don't know if Stacy's in the boardroom, but he sounds kind of garbled to me as well. I don't know if it's feedback or
Yeah.
not clear or what.
Are you in the boardroom, Stacy?
No, ma'am, I'm in the engineering conference room.
Okay, so turning off your mics in the boardroom.
Isn't quite as good as others, but he needed to be there in order to share his
Sure.
program.
Well, just kind of slow your cadence down, knowing that we need to process it a little bit more slowly than we typically can, because there's just a little bit of feedback. But
Sure.
proceed. Sorry for the interruption.
No worries at all, and I apologize for, I try to enunciate more clearly and speak a little louder and see if that helps. So moving on, again, since the sewer expansion program came into being, there have been 90 projects completed. We have spent over $48 million towards sewer expansion, and we have provided right at 6,400 new sewer connections for customers to connect. But today we've only had about 4,665 of those connect. Some projects that we have either under construction or close to construction, I should say, in any design planning stage. The first two you're probably familiar with is the Beach Haven Phase 2. Both of the, and the Lee Street project, both of these projects, we're working with the county on some drainage projects, and we're able to coordinate our work at the same time that they're doing their work. The Beach Haven Phase 2 project, we've had a substantial amount of grant funds for that project, and so it makes sense for us to move forward with that with the county. Lee Street, that project, we were actually able to get about $500,000 from the community, or the CRA, the Community Redevelopment Agency, and so it definitely helped out with regard to that project. Some of the other projects that you're aware of that we have in design and that we're planning, the Airway Stockdale project that's in Airway just south of 9 Mile Road, north of Johnson, Japonica. That project is actually out off of Inner. A couple of others, Miramar Drive, that's off of Oak Beach Highway, if I recall. Need to verify that. Mobile Highway is another project that we were requesting some state appropriations funds. We requested, I think, in total $6 million in two phases. We ultimately got $250,000 for that work. It's not the full grant amount we were asking for. $250,000 certainly helps to do some work. Other projects we have in the queue are Navy Point Phase 4. We recently split that project into two phases, sub-phases, mainly because we want to take advantage of teaming with the county on a subsequent phase, Phase 4B, when they do a drainage project. They have a substantial drainage project, and to the tune, I think it was estimated about $8 or $9 million in that area. And if we coordinate with them, we could take advantage of some mobilization, sharing with the contractor, perhaps sharing some of the cost of repaving the roads and the like there. River Gardens, that's one that Ms. Perkins, the East Champion, we've got that coming up here in the next fiscal year. And then, as always, we try to take advantage of some new development projects. If a developer is running a new sewer main to connect their development, we always try to see if there's an opportunity to stub out new laterals for that developer or for that community. And we have some oversizing dollars for that.
Stacy, that Miramar is on Lillian Highway. It's on Toledo Bay, though. It's right on the water.
Gotcha. My apologies. So we've got the, what I've got in front of you is a table. The next couple of slides are tables here. We've got the airway Stockdale area. And what's important about this table is that we have three criteria that we usually try to prioritize our sewer expansion. The first is a priority area, and that is when we coordinate with the health department or DEP if they have any known history of septic tank failures. We have the proximity of surface water bodies. Beach Highway is a good one where we have Grand Bayou Chico. And then we also have the Community Redevelopment Agency areas, or the CRA. And then on the far right column of the table, we have the cost per connection. We'll circle back to the cost of connection because that's important for us to remember when we're funding these projects, because it does take a while to pay off the debt associated with some of the sewer expansion projects.
Mr. Hayden, let me interrupt. May I interrupt you for just one moment? One of the other things I think we consider is if there are a large number of failing septic systems in that area. Isn't that one of our considerations?
Yes, ma'am. So the priority area, that's typically when we will work with the health department to identify those failures, and so that is one part of the priority consideration.
Was that one of the considerations in the Stockdale area? I think it's the previous slide.
Yes, ma'am. Let me go back here and check. I'm so sorry.
There. Because that doesn't meet other criteria, but I'm just wondering if it has failing septic systems.
Steve, if you're trying that new microphone, nothing's coming through at the moment. We thought we'd try an external microphone in lieu of the computer's microphone to see if that would improve the quality of his voice.
So is that working now?
Now we hear you, yes.
Okay. Is that a little clearer by chance? I'm hoping.
It is.
Okay, good. So you going back to your question about Airway Stockdale, there were some septic tank failures in that area. The reason why it's an oversight on my part, honestly. However, when speaking with the health department, that is no longer, or I should say, they have a higher emphasis on a few other areas at the moment, and I can get to those. I'll get to those later in the presentation.
Madam Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Stacy, when we were doing our budget, I committed to Dr. Alexander that I would do my best to try funding for a project he was interested in. So I want to carry through on the commitment. Is that on this sheet anywhere, or is that something titled something else I need to be aware of?
It may be in a different project. Is that the one off of Lakeview and U Street?
Okay, so
Dr.
that's what I need to be looking for, is Lakeview.
I believe that's the one, but I want to we'll circle back to that one because that is it's one that we discussed sewer expansion. However, that's more of a developer project that we typically don't provide sewer expansion for new development. That's usually on the developer. Even though I think it was for the tiny houses or tiny homes development, which is certainly a worthwhile cause. But for those projects, typically it's the developer that would pay for extending the sewer line.
The audio is not that great. I will follow up with staff on this and make sure that and once Dr. Alexander's off the board, I can talk to him freely, and then we'll make sure I follow through on it.
Sure.
Ms. Campbell, did you have a question?
Yeah, That tiny home is what that was, right? It's on page 9 as a potential project. I see Paradise Beach on there too. Is that a low pressure?
Paradise is one that we are considering low pressure. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And that's on, that's correct. That's going to be on a subsequent slide moving down. The ones that are listed on the table, those are ones that we currently have in the budget and either under construction or in design, and that we're trying to get to the award of bid. So, and that's coming up here. So we have potential future projects. So we have the Atwood area. That one has a history of septic tank issues, septic tank failures as well. We have the Brownsville area, which is off of Mobile Highway. We have Creekwood, which is on Highway 297A, just north of the Highway 97 intersection. The Gulf Beach Highway area, and I've got maps of the ones in the bold font here in just a second. So that's the Gulf Beach Highway area from Athens to Andy, and I'll show you that on a map here in just a second. And then we also have the Gulf Beach Highway area in the Beach Haven community. So we have Beach Haven 1, Phase 1, Beach Haven Phase 2, which we're now getting started on with the county. That'll be out to bid here very soon. And then we'll have about two more large phases of that project to finish that area up. Some other projects that's kind of been lingering out there that we'd like to tackle in the near future is Holtberry, and that's located between the section between 9 Mile and 10 Mile. We have the Old Warrington area, which then I'll provide a map of that here in just a second. The Paradise Beach area, which is over off of close to Perdido Key. Pardon me for just a second.
Sorry, Paradise Beach is on Highway 98.
Yes, I'm sorry, I have my pages mixed up here.
Yeah, it's not on Perdido. It's near the.
Really, Fort Perdido, but it's off of Paradise Beach is located off of Lillian Highway. It's pretty isolated, but it's on Perdido Bay, and its proximity to the water bodies is the main driver for that project to get completed. And lastly, we noted a few minutes ago the tiny homes development. I believe that's the one that Mr. Perkins and Dr. Alexander wanted to see move forward. However, I think we need to discuss that one a little bit more, perhaps at a later time. Typically, that development, again, it's probably a worthwhile project, but typically development has to pay extension of sewer mains to serve their project. To give you an idea of, I've got the 3 Department of Health priority areas, the high priority areas. The first one is Creekwood. As you can see, that is north of the intersection of Highway 97 and 297A. More closely in the cantonment area, probably in the southern parts of the cantonment area. Then we have the Gulf Beach Highway area from Andy to Aldoon. That's right there on Bayou Grande. The main driver for that one, again, is its proximity to the water body and the history of failing septic tanks. We also have the Old Warrington area, and that was pretty recognizable right there on Bayou Grande, because we have kind of to the south and to the west, we have the Navy Point area that we've been doing a lot of sewer expansion in there, as well as the Beach Haven on the top left corner. That would be part of the Beach Haven project, phase 1, that we recently completed.
Do the green lines mean that it's already done?
The green, yes, ma'am. The green lines are new sewer mains, actually. And the highlighted green is just the parcels that are served. You see there's some missing there on 2nd Street that didn't get picked up. So next I'm going to discuss the cost of the sewer expansion program. First is costs related to ECUA. Using our current figures that I presented earlier, the roughly 6,400 available connections and the 4,665 connected, the average cost per connection is $7,500 for the total number of connections versus $10,000 per connection if we deduct those that have not been connected. In other words, the cost per connection is higher when not all of the customers that could have connected don't connect. I'd like to give you a hypothetical but very close to accurate example. In other words, if the cost for sewer expansion is roughly $20,000 per connection and only 75% of the property owners connect, the equivalent cost per connection is in excess of $26,000 per connection. This is one of the things that we evaluate, and it continues to rise proportionately with the construction costs. And perhaps in an extreme example, we have an older project that was completed in 2003 off of Lakeside Drive that equated to $39,000 per connection. While environmental factors may have played a role in determining the feasibility of that project, we need to evaluate alternative sewer systems for high cost per connection projects such as that one. Another cost to ECUA is our current policy is to waive the impact fee for the first year. This cost is roughly $1,600 for a residential customer. And while this can be a good way to encourage connection, ECUA needs these fees to pay for the upgraded wastewater treatment plants and replacing the sewer system backbone to provide additional capacity for these projects. Another cost to ECUA for sewer expansion is the grinder pump reimbursement program. This program is for customers that switch from septic to sewer, and they have to install a grinder pump to connect to a low pressure system, and that reimbursement amount is $1,500. So combined with the impact fee waiver and the grinder pump reimbursement, ECUA provides a benefit to the customer of about $3,000 that is above and beyond the cost of construction of a new sewer system. In addition to these costs that I've just noted, there's what I like to call an opportunity cost that we need to consider. So the opportunity cost of delaying, replacing, or rehabilitating existing water and sewer system components can be significant. And I mentioned water because, when we're looking at our budget, we kind of lump these projects in together, water and sewer project. Currently, ECUA has over 65 miles of antiquated galvanized water mains that need to be replaced to improve water quality, the pressure within the water distribution system, and address many of the water mains that break due to age and internal corrosion. For example, if ECUA were to use the $14 million that it currently has budgeted for sewer expansion projects to replace these water mains in lieu of it going to sewer expansion, we could replace all of these galvanized water mains. Using sewer as an example, at one point in the recent past, we discussed the $400 million worth of sewer rehab to address for the consent order. We've since met with DEP, and the requirement was to aim toward the priority sewer rehabilitation projects to reduce SSOs, and that now we are looking at about $100 million over 10 years, which leaves a offset of about $300 million that we worth of work that we're not trying to attack. So if we were to spend the $14 million on sewer rehab, we could rehabilitate over 80 miles of 8-inch diameter sewer main. Next, we have cost to the customer. The first thing is not really a cost to the customer, but a benefit to the customer, and that's the property value that can potentially increase significantly depending on where they are in the town or in the area. So that's just one thing to consider. Typically, the cost to connect for a gravity system is $1,500 to $3,000 for the work on private property. And if the customer were to use a grinder pump, that cost would be about $5,000 to $7,000 for the work on private property. And these costs can be much higher depending on the site conditions. Two things I would like to add is that a grinder pump is an appliance that requires maintenance and replacement from time to time, and those costs can be significant too to the property owner that needs to consider this before they move forward and connect. This is also why it's important to get the necessary number of property owners that wish to connect and possibly consider a higher percentage on the petition when we are reaching out to the property owner. The property owner reaches out to ECUA to request or make a request for sewer expansion. All sewer expansion is a good thing. It helps out the environment. It's just a number of benefits, but some important issues and concerns that we have are project selection, things like percentage of customers wanting sewer that's in a given area, the environmental impact of not doing the work. In other words, the impact of waterways, water bodies, the cost sharing that we have within a given area, such as an MSBU. We have grant funding that if we could get money from from the state, from the county, from the city to do sewer expansion, that would also be a good thing. And there's some other important factors that we have when considering like the cost per connection. We really need to pay attention to that and make sure we aren't straying too far out there. So we have the costs for the project, and per the ECUA code, they must be financially feasible. We haven't typically identified what is financially feasible. There's so many factors, and what I would like to do in the coming months is take a closer look at that. Let's get something defined. I'd like to get that in front of the board for their consideration. We'll do that at a later date. Some of the other things to consider are implementation barriers. The cost to connect may be high, either for the customer under an MSBU. The participation level is low. You may have 3 or 4 customers that really want sewer in their area, but maybe the other majority just simply don't want it. We have concurrent needs. So if we can, for instance, if we can install a sewer system where the county or city is installing a stormwater system, that's one thing we really need to capitalize on that opportunity. And then we have communications with affected neighborhoods. That's one issue, concern that we have. Construction of the sewer and roadway is very disruptive to the community, and construction can be slow going, particularly if it's in an area where there's a high groundwater table or bad soils where we have more of an impact. We need more of a larger work area per se. And then lastly would be the major roadway projects. So if we have sewer expansion along a major roadway, they can be substantially more to replace, and we have higher maintenance of traffic issues, and it's just a little more difficult area for construction. Typically, those projects will cost substantially more. In ECUA, you should note that ECUA doesn't control the timing of the city, county, and the DOT projects. If a project is scheduled by a DEP, the city or the county, it may be difficult to fund those projects and not take away from other sewer expansion projects. So sewer expansion is paid for by ECUA ratepayers, and it may cause increases. And that's one of the reasons why I'd like us to evaluate the minimum participation for sewer expansion projects. The other thing is I noted earlier was the cost per connection. Assuming that we have a cost per connection for a sewer expansion project, the cost per connection equates to $10,000 or even $7,500, which has been our average over since 1995. ECUA's current sewage usage rates do not cover or pay for the debt for that system. Also, this assumes that $0 from that sewage usage rate is applied to operation, maintenance, and replacement. So in essence, what I'm saying is the entire usage fee that one pays for sewer would not cover the debt to repay for the sewer expansion project for that area. And again, as I mentioned earlier, on the last item there is the opportunity cost. ECUA staff, again, we previously identified the $400 million in sewer rehabilitation needs to reduce SSOs, and the major focus is needed on existing sewer and water systems. ECUA may want to consider limiting funding to sewer expansion, perhaps in the neighborhood of $2 million per year. That's just a level that I threw out to really get the conversation started. And some of the future, I guess I should say, this is some of the future directions that we want to discuss, and that's one is our annual funding needs, because it's very difficult to coordinate with the city and county on projects that may come up unexpectedly. And if we don't have the budget there, then another sewer expansion project may get delayed. The other part of our future direction is coordination and cooperation with Escambia County. We want to continue our efforts there because if we are able to take advantage of other work that they are doing, it certainly helps us out and cuts that cost per connection, or keeps the cost per connection down very low. Major roadway projects coming up. We have the Longleaf Pinestead connector. That's over near our Godwin facility in that general vicinity and West Florida High School. So that project's coming up. We're going to be installing some sewer along Longleaf, and so that'll be a good project for us. And the other thing to consider is perhaps the low pressure sewer as an option. So when we're trying to keep the cost per connection down, that may be something we could consider. It's good for a low density area, for areas that there are high groundwater. There's a high groundwater table, such as Inner Island, Paradise Beach, that area. And but the thing to remember here is the cost to the customer is going to be slightly higher, or could be substantially higher, depending on how the system is connected. So I've given you a lot of problems. I want to try and go over some of the potential solutions real quickly. So some of the things that we recommend to help mitigate the challenge of funding the sewer expansion projects is, of course, the top of the list is work with lobbyists to maximize our grant funds from federal or state sources. That should be a no-brainer. Another option is consider is funding to be provided by the homeowner by way of the MSBU, albeit that's never a popular way to go, but it provide the homeowner with a way to get sewer in their area. And if not for 100% of the project, maybe consider 50% of the project, particularly if an area is in an environmentally impacted area.
Madam Chairman, one venue for that is the neighborhood initiated sewer expansion program that we put into place years ago, where if a neighborhood wants to contribute some funds, and we can work with them and try to figure out how to do that. So I guess that would fall under the category he just discussed.
Sure. And I think, thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Perkins, because that is such a good program, but it's been used once, I think. Because it has such I think it requires unanimity among the neighbors. And so if that program is going to be successful, we probably ought to review the guidelines to determine if there's a way that we can put some money in from ECUA, if we can reduce the threshold of participation, or if there are other ways to encourage neighborhoods to take this on. Now, I don't have answers, but I think that is a promising direction that you bring up. But we need to tweak it some so that more people will use it.
I have a question. Is that on a MSBU type program, or?
I don't think it has been in the past, has it, Mr. Hayden? The neighborhood initiated, they just paid the cost, didn't they?
Correct. The MSBU is a county program that the county would, provide the funding, and then that would be on the property owner's tax bill. The neighborhood initiated has a little bit different requirements, and that's fully an ECUA program. It does have some minimum participation requirements. I think it's 60%, maybe 66%. I can't remember at the moment. But that is one option, and so it's a neighborhood initiated as an ECUA program, MSBUs through the county. So we would be in control of our destiny with the neighborhood initiated project. And you'll see on the slide now that I now have in front of you, one of those, one of the things I like to propose as a potential solution, again, this is not anything that the board's going to be voting on today, but this is something that we're going to be bringing back to the board and just some things that we're considering in general. So part of it is to request cost sharing from other agencies if sewer expansion is for commercial areas to promote economic development. There's been some recent questions from the county that they would like to do sewer expansion in the New Warrington, Navy Boulevard area and over off of Mobile Highway, and mainly with economic development in mind. So moving on to participation, the reason why we would like to require higher participation is because that cost per connection is getting high, and it's getting higher with the increase in construction costs. So one of the solutions that we would like to evaluate is require 75% or greater for sewer system connectivity in those areas where customers are calling and wanting sewer. We just want to be sure that, one, the cost to connect, that could be substantial for a property owner, particularly if it's a low pressure system. You're asking a property owner to pay $5,000 to $7,000 to install a grinder pump, and they may not have wanted to participate in the sewer expansion program. That's just something that we need to be cognizant of moving forward. And similarly, I would offer that we institute an agreement similar to the neighborhood initiated sewer expansion projects, to where we have a petition the residents in a particular neighborhood that are wanting sewer expansion, and we, that percentage participation is met prior to design, and we have some agreements in place prior to proceeding with construction, because again, some of these projects are multi-million-dollar projects, and we want some guarantee that we're going to have the connect in the near future rather than wait a decade or more when their septic system fails.
We had trouble in the past with folks not signing up once we not connecting.
Stacy?
In some cases, yes, ma'am.
If you would respond to Ms. Campbell, because I think those numbers are a little startling.
May I ask, I'm sorry, Ms. Campbell, what was the question?
Have we had trouble with folks connecting once we put sewer in to an area?
Yes, ma'am. In some cases, there was a project or two I was looking through the other day that we only had a 43% connectivity rate. And in some cases, they're not going to connect until the septic system fails and the health department forces them to connect.
Yeah, that's stunning.
Yeah, that's stunning. When I walk neighborhoods, I always tell people going in that I have to have 75% participation. So, I'm happy to go walk door to door with you, but if we don't have 75%, it's not really feasible for me to have my ratepayers pay for it.
Precisely, and one of the things I would like to add is that I would like to formalize this process, and then that way, certainly if somebody comes and tells me, hey, I'm going to get sewer for free, or if that's what I hear, regardless if it was said, I'm going to say, yeah, sure, sign me up. But I would like to formalize the process where we have that petition, their signature on the petition, as well as inform them that, hey, this is what your sewer bill is going to be, based on an average usage. This is what your sewer bill is anticipated to be. And so you have a well-informed resident that's going to be signing up for sewer expansion. And I feel like that would then increase that participation that would connect in the future, sooner rather than later.
So state law does require them to hook on once it's available within a year. It's just that the law is not enforced, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's my understanding.
So I think we have a problem in several ways. We have a problem going in with, we haven't built the consensus of the people to whom we are now offering sewer at the outset. So we ought to have some number that agree to participate. But if we are going to go to this expense, and if we truly believe it's a benefit to the environment for everybody in this county, whether or not they're in water, I think there ought to be an enforcement mechanism to make sure that people do tie in. And I don't know, can we get the health department to be more aggressive about that enforcement? Or, you know, are there carrots or sticks to get people to tie in?
There may be a possible stick I'll mention here in a minute. It's well, I'll go ahead and mention it now. It's on the next slide, but one of the things would be to implement a service availability fee for those that don't connect. I know, you know, there are some utilities in the state of Florida that, you know, if they provide a sewer expansion project and the homeowner doesn't connect for whatever reason, then there's a minimal fee, and I think in some cases it was either $13 or $15 per month that customer would pay. I say customer, they wouldn't be a sewer service customer, they would be, well, hopefully a water system customer, but they wouldn't be connected to sewer, but they'd still be required to pay it. So that's one potential solution. And I'm not saying I advocate for any of the above, because I'm just trying to get options out there and let you know these are the things that we will be considering and bringing to the board at a later date for potential action. Another thing that we could consider is eliminating the impact fee waiver. I know that the impact fee waiver was intended to, you know, help get customers to connect sooner rather than later, but if that's not effective, we need to evaluate that. If it's not effective, maybe consider eliminating that. I know a lot of other utilities throughout the state, they don't have that ability because they don't do waiving of the impact fee, because the impact fee is based on the upgrades to the wastewater treatment plants that are increased in capacity to take on the additional flow from sewer expansion. And it also helps to you know, replace the backbone of our system, again, to increase capacity. So it's somewhat counterintuitive to waive the impact fee, but I certainly understand why we would do that, because we're trying to get customers to connect as soon as possible and help it out on them. However, ECUA is spending a substantial amount of money to get sewer to them, and you know, that $1,500 could be less than 10% of what ECUA is paying to get sewer to them. We could also increase the amount of special connection fee for the neighborhood initiated sewer expansion projects to equal 50 to 75% of per unit construction cost. Currently, our neighborhood initiated sewer expansion program is stated that the customer has to pay $2,500 or half of the project cost, whichever is less. And I would like to reword that to state whichever is greater and subject to available funding. I know I'm not going to be the most popular person at the end of this presentation, and but I'm taking a long, hard look at the sewer expansion program, and just want to just look at the feasibility, the viability of the program. It's something I know that we need to do, but I'm just trying to figure out a different way of doing it moving forward. The other option would be to set a maximum annual sewer expansion amount of $2 million, which would equate to approximately 8% of our typical CIP budget. Again, I know it's not going to be looked upon favorably. And moving on, to the summary, we have a lot of, we've come a long way, but I know we have a long way to go. We have many sewer expansion needs that outweigh the available funding and compete with funding needed for operation and maintenance of our existing water and sewer system. Low pressure sewer expansion is a higher cost to the property owner for work on private property, but is a substantially lower cost to ECUA and its ratepayers. The other part is implementation petition requirements and ensure the property owners informed of sewer bill costs and percentage of property owners that want the sewer. So we have to consider some changes to optimize the use of ECUA-funded sewer expansion projects and have a more stringent requirement to move a project forward. With a high number of participants, lower cost per connection, and maybe have 2 out of 3 category requirements. And by that I mean, is it an impact, a failing septic system? Is it near water body? And are we getting any CRA grant funds for the project? So, yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Hayden, first of all, thank you for doing all of this. I think my eyes are more open than before. I believe this board has been committed to sewer expansion, and I think we still believe that we want to get rid of septic tanks in areas near surface water or in areas where they're failing. I'm shocked at some of the costs per unit that you're quoting. I had no idea that phase 4 of Navy Point was coming in at 23,000. That is a huge number. I'm also discouraged by the lack of connections by people to whom we do this wonderful sewer expansion. But it seems to me the one number that we ought to focus on if we're going to fix this problem, and I guess there are lots of fixes, there's not one fix, but that is what it costs the customer to tie in once sewer is available. Because I think that's where we get the drop off. I think the people to whom we've expanded, in the areas to which we've expanded sewer, have wanted sewer lines. They've wanted to be in the system. I don't think it's the monthly fee. It's that connection fee that is kind of daunting for many, many households in that area. So is there any creative way, and I'm not asking for this today, but as you contemplate all of the variables, I'd like to figure out a way to make that part of it more affordable for the individual customer, whether it's, putting together packages from plumbers who will give a rate to a neighborhood or whatever, because I think most people, when you come to them and say, well, this is going to cost you an extra $3,000 to $6,000 out of pocket, are thinking about all the things that they're going to do without and where they're going to find that money. So if we can use our creativity there, I think it can boost those numbers of people that suddenly tie in and make our sewer expansion more successful.
So, can I?
Ms. Kim.
So years ago, when we were not the Emerald Coast Utility Authority and all the utilities belonged to the county, they did MSBU for this. Case in point was Bio Grande Villas. I lived there as a young girl. That was my first house that I bought, and it was $750 to put in the sewer, and the county put it in, and we paid $2 or $3 a month. I don't even remember what it was. It was something very, very low, and until it was paid off. And if you sold the house, you paid it off. And so, I mean, I never forget them. It was almost like paying off a mortgage when I paid off that sewer bill, So I don't know why we can't do that now. Why can't we do the tie-in as an MSBU if we work with the county? Can we put a presentation together for them? And I'll be happy to go set it up with the county, or Bruce can go set it up with the county. And if we can't do it that way, for the ones that can't come up with it. I mean, if you want to pay it all at once, by all means, pay it all at once. But I mean, you were just talking about Beach Haven, $20,000. Who lives in Beach Haven that's got $20,000 in hand? Nobody. So there's the reason you only have 40%. People don't have the money.
That's absolutely a big hurdle to have to overcome. One of the aspects of the upcoming rate study will give us an opportunity to provide you some more factual information, objective information on which to make some policy decisions. We can break down what cost component of what they pay monthly is operations, how much is capital recovery, ascribe some public value to the important and noble causes of protecting the environment, getting rid of septic tanks, et cetera, investing in the overall capital that all the ratepayers collectively own. That we can help separate a little bit about what ECUA needs to be investing in versus what perhaps the private property owner needs to invest in, because they are receiving a service, number one, and they are receiving increased value to their property as a result of having that service provided to them. And then, this has been well stated by two of you already, that cost hurdle up front. If we can find a comfortable financing mechanism in conjunction with the county, be it MSBU or otherwise, to finance that portion that isn't paid for by ECUA, then maybe the combination of those two things might be an option. So it's really not asking for you to make any decisions at all tonight. Just trying to enlighten you about some of the hurdles that we face on the administrative side, and let you know that that's a issue we want to rate study and give you some food for thought while we're going through that process.
If I might just too, I work in every county in the state of Florida, all 67. And when I pull tax bills, I'm working right now. On some of them, I'm going to see sewer improvement fees on their tax bills all over Florida. So, I mean, I think part of the problem is the fact that we're a separate entity from the county, unlike the majority of the counties in Florida that have that funding mechanism. If they want to put in sewer, they put it in and put it on the tax bill. So I would, I've been talking to my counterpart, and I think we all should, start those conversations with our counterparts about, we need some septic and sewer in certain areas, and let's, see if we can get that, just get that talk over.
For an MRI, but I'm going to try to go over the admission history real quick, okay?
I'm sorry, who's speaking? I hear its voice, but who?
Ma'am, I think that was District 5.
Yes, Madam Chairman, this is Larry
Yes.
Walker. I just checked in.
Hi, Larry.
Hi, from the hospital room. Thanks to these iPads, I can do it from the hospital. So that's nice. I'm fine, nothing wrong with me except a small TIA. I started to say that if we're talking about relieving home buyers of impact fees, that an impact fee is a very tiny part of the cost of a new house. And I don't know why we would really be talking about that. Thank you. A nurse just came in. I've got to shut off my sound now.
Thank you. We're sending prayers to you, Dr. Walker. Okay. So back to the overall discussion. I want to be sure that in no way we dilute our commitment to sewer expansion or septic to sewer. I think this board has been committed to this for many, many years, and when I talk to constituents, they believe in it. I mean, the people of this community love our waterways. That's why we're here. We do not want to do anything that's harmful. We want to improve them. I also think right now we have support from the state. In a budget year where there were all kinds of vetoes to all kinds of really important programs and ideas, we still got funding for Brownsville. And that tells me that the governor is behind these kinds of efforts. which means there might be more grants available. I want to be careful that while we needed this wake-up call that you gave us, and I think that there's some numbers that I did not know of, we need to be more creative in how we approach this, and in making sure that the customers or the potential customers are our partners going forward, and to do things that makes it more available to them, like the upfront costs. I also assume that you don't want us to take action today, Mr. Woody, that you are presenting this because you're going to do a further cost of service study, and this will be one of the things that emerges, a recommendation that emerges from that. Am I correct?
That's exactly right. We want to be sure that you're aware of this component of the rate study, being able to give it some policy thought individually as we work on this, and that way you'll be in a better position when we bring some thoughtful ideas for your actual consideration in the not too distant future. Yeah, we're not talking about a big swing of the pendulum in the other direction, but maybe bringing a little more back to center and having a more comfortable balance between our environmental goals and our conservative fiscal responsibilities to the entire rate base at the same time.
Anyone else from the board wish to address this? If not, thank you, Mr. Hayden, very much for a very well done presentation, and thank you, Mr. Woody, also for your initiative and your leadership in this. I know we'll hear more, and we'll all be thinking about this.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Benson. One thing I would like to add, the question about if ECUA can help with the cost of connection. We actually do offer a financing program through ECUA. I think we can finance that up to 5 years, and I think maybe more depending on the cost. So that is one option that maybe some customers aren't aware of, that maybe if we promoted the program a little bit more, that we might increase those participation numbers. But with that being said, that's all. I appreciate your time. Thank you for the opportunity, and certainly appreciate your.
One question, how much of that can we finance?
For the connection, I believe we can finance 100%. And so, I probably need to be clear. When I reference a cost per connection with regard to the overall construction cost, that's the overall construction cost per connection. That's not how much it costs for the customer to actually connect the sewer. That cost is about, for gravity, it could range on the low end about $1,500 to $3,000. For low pressure, that could range from $5,000 upwards of perhaps $7,000.
Yeah. And that's where I think they need help. Okay, thank you. Is there anything else from the members?
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is the Florida Local Government Information Systems Association 2020 Technology Award. Mr. Woody.
Just want an opportunity to congratulate John, Donna, and his staff for an award that they received recently for work that they've done in our technology area, helping us take the next step forward and provide better customer service. They submitted an application for an award and were recognized this year again. I mentioned it briefly in the board report, but I wanted to have an opportunity to make a public mention of that and notice John and his staff for their hard work.
Congratulations, John, and members of the IT staff. Item 7, it is approval of the minutes, and I need to add that we have a handout number GR2018. Mr. Beasley, will you explain why this handout is associated with the board minutes?
Sure. The prior approval of this motion had in it a transposition of the numbers, and it would not have been a problem. We would consider it a Scrivener's error and would have corrected the resolution and proceeded with the contract on the transposed numbers, except for the fact that those numbers were also read into the prior minutes. So given the fact that the minutes are incorrect, as well as the resolution, we felt it necessary to have a resolution, which is this -12R, which is the handout, not 12R, the handout, which would correct the minutes also.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Are there any other corrections or additions to the minutes, members of the board? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes that includes this handout of GR 2018? Is there a motion?
Walker approves, makes the motion.
Dr. Walker makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And it passes unanimously. Item 8 is a report of the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting of August 18th, 2020, chaired by Ms. Campbell. Ms. Campbell, you are recognized.
Thank you. Item F was an adoption of the general resolution number GR 20-11. It's on page 22, a general resolution authorizing executive director to execute a renewal contract with Preferred Governmental Insurance Trust, PGIT, and Preferred Governmental Claims Solutions, PGCS, to renew the workers' compensation insurance and third-party administrator TPA claims administration services with an effective date of October 1, 2020. Item G was adoption of a general resolution number GR 20-12, a general resolution authorizing executive director to execute a sole source purchase order in the amount of $164,319 with Pump and Process Equipment, Inc. to supply replacement parts for 4 central water reclamation facility effluent pumps. Item H was adoption of a general resolution number GR 2013. It's on page 23, a general resolution authorizing the extension of the contract with DPC Enterprises with the purchase of liquid chlorine and providing an effective contract date. Item I was adoption of a general resolution number GR 2014 on page 23, a general resolution authorizing the extension of the contract with Hawkins Dumont Inc. for bulk orthophosphate and providing an effective date. Item J was adoption of a general resolution GR 20-15 on page 23. The general resolution authorizing the acceptance of bid and awarding contract, authorizing the executive director to execute a contract with Utility Service Company, Inc. for $687,690.78 to complete the Rolling Hills Transmission Main Restoration Project, authorizing the use of funds from the budget established for the CIP project RS-887, Rolling Hills Central Transmission Main Restoration. I would like to move, they were all consent, full approval. I'd like to move items F through H. Move items F and H through J. I'm going to hold item G because we have a correction on it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? It passes 5-0. You may proceed, Ms. Campbell.
Okay, and item G, if you look at item 9A, it's an adoption of general resolution for that, revised with the correct figures. So
I can clarify further. There was this is a revision to a prior ordinance that was passed or that was recommended to the board from the August 18th Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. There was a stray paragraph from another topic that made it into the remarks in error. We didn't want that to be misleading, so we have deleted that section and are asking you to approve the revised version.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, we're voting on the revised item G. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes unanimously. Does that conclude your report?
Yes, ma'am, that concludes my report, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. The operational items are items 9A and B. Item A is, would you like to do this as a consent agenda, first of all? Sir,
Madam Chairman, I move items 9A and B.
okay. Items 9A and B have been moved. Is there a second?
Walker seconds.
Walker seconds. Okay, I will read the titles of these for the records. Item 9A is adoption of general resolution number GR 20-12R revised, a general resolution authorizing the executive director to execute a sole source purchase order in the amount of $164,319 with Pump and Process Equipment, Inc. to supply replacement parts for 4 central water reclamation facility effluent pumps. Item B is adoption of general resolution GR 20-16, a general resolution authorizing the retained easement over the former H Street vacated right-of-way to be no longer useful, necessary, or profitable in the operation of the utility systems of the Emerald Coast Utilities Authority, approving and concurring in the findings of the executive director, declaring the easement to be surplus and providing an effective date for vacation of the easement. Is there any discussion of either of these items?
Madam Chairman, Walker.
Yes, Dr. Walker, you're recognized.
I would like to say that I would advise the board that in the approval of the release of an easement to a private property owner, that I think it would be a good idea to always identify the property owner involved and any representative of that property owner who is involved in the negotiations for the sake of transparency. It seems a little strange. It seems to me to be unwise for us to simply say that we hereby give away this easement, this thing that may be of some value to someone without at least identifying who the someone is for the public record. Thank you.
Interesting perspective. And let me weigh in, Dr. Walker, because I always take what you say very seriously. Does that make it personal? In other words, if this is surplus property, is it not surplus no matter to whom the benefit accrues? And if we identify a person in adopting this, have we somehow made it more personal than objective? Just my thought. Ms. Campbell?
My only thoughts on this are it's not like a vacated road right away in which we own the property. In that case, I understand that mindset because, it's not our property. In this case, this property already belongs to the people. We're just removing our rights to an easement over their property. It's not like we're giving them anything. It's like we're saying we're not using this easement anymore, so why would we have an easement over it? It doesn't matter to me. I have no problem with not identifying who owns the property, but I mean, I don't see where.
Sure.
I don't see where.
Dr. Walker wishes to speak. Mr. Woody, did you want to go first before he speaks?
I defer to Dr. Walker and then I'll follow.
Okay, good. Dr. Walker?
Madam Chairman, I also thought of what you just brought up, that yes, it could appear as if, well, we want to know who to give it to or who not to give it to as a matter of personal vendetta or whatever, things like that. I thought of that too. And I think it might be best to ask our board attorney to look into the legal aspects of this and advise the board for the future.
Okay, good, thank you.
On the one hand, we can be accused of political vendettas. On the other hand, we might be accused of opaqueness and lack of transparency
Right,
in what we're doing.
right. Yes, thank you. Mr. Woody?
We didn't put, and we didn't necessarily research what the history was in terms of the original ownership of the right-of-way, whether it was owned in fee by the city of Pensacola or whether in fact it was a right-of-way easement. One way or the other, it was vacated in the past, so it returned to the properties from which it came. Easements would do likewise. I do agree with Dr. Walker. It would be appropriate and better to name the property owners who are receiving the benefits of these easements. But in all likelihood, these very same property owners already own and have control of the underlying fee of the property.
Mr. Beasley, did you want to weigh in on this?
Only to say that I understood the instructions and I'd be glad to look into it. I don't know the answer. I see both sides of it. I want to look at what the code says, and I have some thoughts on it, but I think I'd rather just take a minute to look at it and get back to the board on it.
Okay. There's no reason for us to delay acting on this one. This would be for future, and I think you raise a good question, Dr. Walker. So we will look at that for any future vacation of easements, unless there's an objection to enacting this one. Anyone else?
The current vacation, I'm sorry to interrupt, the current vacation meets all of the statutory and code requirements in its form and function today. If the advising or providing input as to who the beneficiaries of the vacation would be is something as a matter of disclosure that the board feels is appropriate, it's going beyond what the code requires. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. I'm just saying today's motion and easement is sufficient. If we're talking about this change, it may be something that we want to change as far as a matter of disclosure in future vacations.
Okay. And Dr. Walker?
Yes, the one little detail in the report on this, that the agenda item on this that got me thinking about this was where it said that the easement had a value of less than $100,000. Okay, and I thought, well, holy cow, what if it has a value of $95,000 and we're giving it away? Let's think about this. I trust that Mr. Beasley and the board and staff will be able to come up with a good answer. I just wanted to raise the question.
Thank you for keeping us on our toes. Any further discussion of either of these items?
I just wanted to follow up on that.
Sure.
And my reason for this, for saying I wouldn't, I'm a property rights person. And if we have an easement over another man's property and we're not using it, I don't have any problem with vacating it so that they can use it to its fullest benefit. I will always vote. I don't care who owns property. I'm always going to vote for that person to have the full rights and use of the property that they own and not try to hold them from doing whatever they can do with it if we're not using it. If we're using it, it's different. But if we're not, it wouldn't matter to me if it was, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, whichever one owned it, wouldn't matter to me.
Probably neither. Okay, anyone else from the board? If not, we are voting on items 9A and B. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes 5-0. We come to.
I think I'd prefer not to know whether it was Trump or Biden in this situation.
Amen.
Okay, the next item is a budget report, and you have on page 35 and subsequent some budget numbers. Does anyone have any questions about the current budget report that was presented to you?
Did we move item 9C, the other correction?
That was absorbed into the minutes.
Oh, okay.
If there are no questions, we'll move to the executive director's report. Mr. Woody?
Just a few things to mention since we just left the budget item a moment ago. I'll make a couple comments. We have, as you remember, purchased from this last year 9 additional vehicles for our sanitation division. They are quite excited to have received now 6 of them that are out and running and in service. An additional 3 remain at the dealer, still going through their dealer prep process, but by the end of next week, I believe we shall have all 9 of those out and running. So we're excited about that. Our Windrow Turner also has we've received the new motor and its associated components. It was received on Monday. Staff's working on installing that and the new hydraulic pump as well, and would anticipate after it's gone through its breakthrough process that along about the end of next week, it'll probably be back into service. So we're excited about that as well. I might additionally say I'm pleased with the work that Tom Dawson and Dan Corliss in our water production area have been working on very diligently, an update to our emergency operations plan. We continue to refine that. We're talking to them a little more, our outside assistants, Arcadis, about helping us add some additional sections to make sure our emergency operations plan addresses all of our operations beyond just water. Fortunately, we didn't have to dust it off and go through that process for the hurricane this past week, but it's good to know that we have a good plan in place to be implemented. One other comment, Gabe Brown and I are undergoing a review and look at our phone tree system. We occasionally will get a complaint or comment about concerns about the phone system. Something leads to a dead end, or there's a gap or pause perhaps in the system. You're not sure if you got disconnected or not. We're going to try to track down some of those problems and challenges and see if we can make some more direct routes and update. It's been a little while since it's been looked at, and wanted to let you know that was going on in the background. I look forward to giving you an update on that in the not too distant future. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Woody? Then we come to the attorney's report. Mr. Beasley?
Sorry, it wouldn't unmute. I have no report at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have no unfinished business or new business listed on my agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to address any new business or unfinished business?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Dr. Walker. Dr. Walker.
Forgive me for coming in late and not being able to add this to the agenda at the beginning.
Sure.
Several days ago, I think I expressed to Mr. Woody in an email message, my, shall I say, questioning about the merits of the new agenda item format that we now are using. If I failed to actually send that to Mr. Woody, I apologize. He can correct me on this. I thought it went to him and I haven't heard anything back. It seems to me that the new agenda item format is duplicitous, redundant, duplicative, adds little to the clarity of the agenda items. In fact, I think it is less transparent than it was before, because we have replaced a memorandum format that had 7 or 8 or even 9 separate clearly labeled subsections with 2 subsections, one entitled staff contact and the other entitled remarks. Basically, we have taken 7 or 8 of memorandum subsections clearly labeled and have combined them all into one mishmash under the label remarks. I don't see any advantage to that. it seems much less clear to me. It seems less transparent to me. I might add that transparency is a matter that is of gets a lot of attention today, and especially you might reconsider, you board members might consider, and staff, that you have a new board member coming on board soon who made a huge issue of transparency in his election campaign. And it seems to me to be an unwise time for the old board members to approve a change in the agenda item format that is less informative, less clear than the old format. I would hope that my fellow board members today would consider these thoughts and would consider reverting back to the use of the old memorandum format for the provision of information about each item, even if for some legal reason it is needed to continue the new general resolution attachment to the old informational format. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Mr. Beasley, I assume you were part of the genesis of this new format. You want to talk to us about why the change?
Sure. So prior to Mr. Woody coming on board as the director, we were charged with revising and evaluating the code that had been updated over the period of time since 1985. In trying to do so, we realized that at some point the ECUA as a policy had passed resolutions, written signed resolutions that could be tracked and could be linked to the various updates on the code. That policy just ended at some point in the 90s, which meant that from the 1990s forward, that when we were trying to sync up the code, Dawn in my office actually had to go read every minutes from every meeting and to find out what the resolution was and whether the code was changed appropriately. And in doing so, it embarked in a massive effort. So stop that line for a minute. Those were issues we were encountering in our effort to revitalize the code. Then I inherited several pieces of litigation that were ongoing at the time. And a key affirmative defense in two of those pieces of litigation was that there was no evidence of a resolution by the board. And in some places, the code requires the executive director, allows the executive director certain authority. That 1,000 to 100,000 disposition of property that we just discussed is an issue of authority. But in some places, it requires that the board approves actions or acts. I'm hearing a redundancy. And in those cases, then we have litigations that the defendants or plaintiffs pointed to the fact that there was no actual resolution to support the notion that the board had approved this. Again, sending us back into the minutes, searching through volumes of minutes to try to determine what the board did or didn't do. So I felt strongly that I wanted to move us back to a scenario where if this board passes a resolution and that it was either one, amending the code, or two, significant or material, meaning that the code defines that it had to have time, then it should be supported by a writing that immediately followed and is signed by the chair. It's standard operations for any board, public body, or otherwise. And then as we developed a pattern of doing that, then when the code was amended, then what we ultimately hope to do is get our code on our website. Not on there now. It's not in a form that even should be on it. And two, then hyperlink those resolutions amended to each code section. So a user can then see the code section, hyperlink the code resolution, pull it up. So that's the goal. That's what it started. So when Mr. Woody came on board, I was pushing him to say, hey, of all the things I need to change, this is something I'd like to change. And here are some resolutions that need to be supportive of board action. Mr. Woody did not resist the idea at all. In fact, he embraced it wholeheartedly and then adopted it and said, in fact, we need to move more towards resolutions, more towards evidence of the board action, and less away from this general idea that the board resolves or votes on something and gives authority to the executive director. You know, clean it up, tighten it up, make it more transparent, actually, was the idea. Then we get to the question at hand, which is how do we get from where we were to where we are? And then I'm going to put the rest of that on Mr. Woody, because he actually developed the format that you're looking at now. The idea was try to not be duplicative as possible. He incorporated some resolutions from his prior service, his prior work, and we worked on different types of resolutions and we refined them. It's a work in progress. He didn't tell me this is what we must do, and I didn't tell him this is what we have to do. We kind of sat down and started working it up. And the result was, by the time we got the resolution and the remarks, plus the memorandums that you already had, you ended up with a 6 to 10 page package on each item, a lot of duplicative. So I think it needs to change. It needs to change to where there's written resolutions. This is a suggested formatting change. It doesn't have to be a final one. I think Mr. Woody could continue to evolve it and go back to something that the board used to see or something along those lines. That gives you the history of how we got to where we are today. It's both a combination of my written resolutions more as a practice of the board, reflecting the votes rather than rely on the minutes, and Mr. Woody's bringing in his knowledge from another organization. This is how we do it there. And obviously that other organization relied and resolutions also.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Mr. Woody. Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Mr. Woody.
Yes, the format I would say is very much still a work in progress, although I brought together a format and try to give some initial guidance. This is the first iteration through with the board, and I think we do have a little bit of duplication still in the remark section. The intention is that you have a succinct title followed by a series of whereases that are in sequential date order that tells some history and context leading up to the item that's being requested of the board for consideration, by having them as a series of individual whereas statements, almost like bullet points. They're easier and quicker to read, and they give some good context, especially for staff or the general public for that matter, who might need to research the history of a particular item. If they had to go back 3 years and pull out a resolution that had been adopted by this board, that whereas information is really valuable information. And then there's a distinct divider then where we go into the 1 to 4 or 5 sections down at the bottom where it states that therefore the board is specifically directing these items of work in there, then itemize what authority is being given. Authority to execute a contract, authority to buy an easement, whatever the action of the particular activity may be. By the time that is done, what's really left for the second page is very little remarks, really. Most of the context has already been provided. If there are some particular options that need to be considered, there might be more elaborate, more detailed narrative on that second page. The versions you got now, again, this first iteration through staff, there's still a little bit of redundancy between the resolution and some of the remarks on the back. But I think that will probably get a little tighter, a little better over time. The remarks page will actually get a little bit shorter over time. At least that's my intention. And the goal is really to be more transparent, not less transparent. So
Madam Chairman.
Madam Chairman. That way.
I tell you, I've been real aggravated this whole. It's because of the sound. Because of the sound I want us to have that fixed. If we do another meeting, like, I don't know if it's extra mics on in the boardroom or what, but whatever it is, I can hardly pay attention. Sound quality is so bad. But as far as what Dr. Walker brought up, both sides of it are accurate. Everything we do needs to be codified, and it needs to be in that code. And when I first came on the board, you could pick up the code book, I got my written copy of it, and go through it and know what was law for ECUA.
Mr. Perkins, would you pause for a minute? Let's everybody turn off your mics except for Mr. Perkins. We have so much feedback right now. So if we could just have Mr. Perkins with his mic on,
Is that any better? If not, I'll save it for our next discussion. Lord, I think we can do the resolutions and have everything codified and provide the excellent background as far as policy impacts, financial impacts that we provided before. So I think not one or the other. I think we can do both. I think we can examine what level of detail we want.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins, and thank you, Dr. Walker. I think probably at this point it might be valuable for us all to kind of weigh in with Mr. Woody and let him know what we would like to see that's necessary. We're clearly having some audio problems at this point. Very frustrating. Ms. Campbell.
We have problems every month with this. It's being recorded. And we're going to continue to have these issues every single month. Just go with the recording going on. I mean, there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, this is
Madam Chairman, Walker.
yes, Dr. Walker.
Thank you. When I spoke before, there was no feedback, but there is now. Okay. I do think the board should seriously consider the wisdom of these changes. I also think that the board should assert its authority in this matter. The board was criticized by the grand jury for not exercising authority and oversight over staff and the attorney too, incidentally. This is not a good time for the board to rubber stamp changes made without clear, explicit board approval. The board should also be concerned about the transparency accusations that have been voiced. I look forward to submitting more comments in writing to the executive director, and I request that all comments by all board members somehow within the limits of the Sunshine Law sunshine law be shared with other board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. I think this discussion is becoming more and more cumbersome because of the feedback, although you've developed a system. Does anyone else want to enter in discussions, or should we delay this until we have a better audio? Okay, I think this is a topic for open discussion that we all need to weigh in, and I would say privately to do so. And maybe we can bring this up again at the next meeting. Thank you for bringing this issue up. Okay. We come now to open forum. Is there anyone who wishes to address us in open forum? No one? Okay. I think we're all equally frustrated. Thank you all. Dr. Walker, it's good to see you looking well. I hope you continue to be well. Thank you all, and we'll see you next month. We are adjourned.